Picture this, it's 1999, 14 years after Speak English or Die became one of the most influential crossover albums ever made. S.O.D are back. But here's the question, can a band that was never supposed to exist in the first place catch lightning in a bottle twice? Heavy music has changed, grunge came and went, nu metal is taking over MTV, yet somehow this outrageous side project featuring members of Anthrax, S.O.D and M.O.D decides it's time for Sergeant D to return. The result is Bigger Than the Devil, an album packed with crushing riffs, offensive humor, inside jokes, and one of the greatest album cover parodies in metal history. Today we're looking at how S.O.D returned, how this unexpected sequel came together, and whether they proved they were still bigger than the devil. Back in 1985, nobody expected S.O.D to become legendary. They were born almost by accident after Anthrax finished recording Spreading the Disease. With a few days of leftover studio time, Scott Ian, Charlie Benante, Dan Lilker, and Billy Milano blasted through Speak English or Die in just a few sessions. It was raw, fast, funny, controversial, and incredibly influential. It helped define crossover thrash by smashing hardcore punk and thrash metal together. But S.O.D was always a side project. Scott Ian and Charlie Benante had Anthrax to focus on. Dan Lilker was busy with S.O.D and later, Brutal Truth. Billy Milano threw himself into M.O.D. As years passed, it looked like S.O.D had become nothing more than a cult favorite frozen in time. Then something interesting happened. The band reunited for a handful of live shows during the 1990s. A one-off performance in 1992 reminded everyone how much fun these songs were. Even bigger was the benefit show in New York in 1996, followed by appearances at festivals like Milwaukee Metal Fest and Germany's With Full Force in 1997. The response surprised everyone. Thousands of fans packed in to see a band that technically didn't even exist anymore. The crowds knew every lyric, every joke landed, every riff hit just as hard as it had in the mid-80s. Those reunion shows convinced the band there was still a real audience waiting for new S.O.D music. Timing also helped. By 1998, everyone's schedules finally lined up. This wasn't easy when every member had commitments to other bands. But for a brief window, they all had enough free time to give S.O.D another shot. The metal scene has also come full circle. While nu metal was exploding, there was a growing appreciation for the bands that had laid the groundwork. Hardcore, thrash, and groove metal were interesting in interesting ways, making S.O.D's crossover style feel relevant again rather than outdated. With support from Nuclear Blast Records, the band suddenly had something they never really had before: a proper budget, a major label behind them, and the opportunity to record a true follow-up instead of another spontaneous side project. That alone made Bigger Than the Devil very difficult from its predecessor. Unlike the chaotic recording sessions for Speak English or Die, this album actually had a plan. Scott Ian, Charlie Benante, and Dan Lilker worked on most of the music first. Billy Milano wasn't immediately involved because he wasn't completely convinced the reunion album was even a good idea. According to the band, Milano wanted to hear the songs before committing himself. Once he heard the material, things started moving quickly. The band entered Big Blue Meanie Studios in New Jersey with engineer Tim Giles, later mixed the record, and with Vincent Wojno. This wasn't a rough and ready production of 1985 anymore. The guitars were thicker, the drums hit harder, everything sounded cleaner without losing the aggression that made S.O.D famous. Charlie Benante especially shines throughout the album. His drumming is incredibly tight, mixing hardcore speed with thrash precision. On We All Bleed Red, he even steps outside his usual role by recording the guitar solo himself, showing yet another side of his musicianship. Sessions also allowed the band to finally finish ideas that had been sitting around for years. One of the biggest examples is Aren't You Hungry? The song actually dates all the way back to the original S.O.D era, but never made it onto Speak English or Die. Billy Milano later reworked it for M.O.D, but Bigger Than the Devil finally presents the original S.O.D version as it was originally intended. Even though the recording process was much more organized this time, the band's trademark sense of humor never disappeared. Many of the short comedy tracks and musical parodies were created right there in the studio. King at the King hilariously imagines King Diamond trying to order a Whopper at Burger King. Celtic Frosted Flakes lovingly pokes fun at Celtic Frost. These weren't mean-spirited attacks. They felt more like affectionate jokes shared between musicians who genuinely loved the bands they were parodying. Sessions even included guest appearances. Roger Moret from Agnostic Front stopped by to contribute vocals to LATKCH, adding another connection to the hardcore scene that had always been part of S.O.D's DNA. Of course, before anyone even heard the album, fans were already talking about the cover. Charlie Benante designed what was to become one of the greatest visual tributes in heavy metal history. At first glance, it looks almost identical to Iron Maiden's legendary Number of the Beast artwork. But instead of Eddie controlling the devil like a puppet, Benante replaced Eddie with Sergeant D, S.O.D's military helmet-wearing mascot. Even the famous Iron Maiden logo was clearly transformed into S.O.D logo while keeping the same overall style. Every little detail echoed the original artwork: the cloud sky, the smoky landscape, the colors, the composition. It was obvious exactly what Benante was referencing. Naturally, fans wondered if Iron Maiden would be upset. After all, Maiden's management, led by Ron Smallwood, has a reputation for fiercely protecting the band's image. But something unexpected happened. Nothing. No lawsuit, no angry statements, no public complaints. Instead, the parody was accepted exactly as was intended. A tribute made by fellow musicians. The reaction made perfect sense when you think about it. Scott Ian and Charlie Benante had toured with Iron Maiden for years as members of Anthrax. These weren't outsiders trying to profit from Maiden's success. They were respected peers paying homage to one of heavy metal's greatest albums. Because the artwork was clearly transformative and obviously comedic, it fit comfortably within parody. Rather than hurting Iron Maiden, the cover reminded everyone how iconic the Number of the Beast had become. It was the kind of joke only metal fans could truly appreciate. Musically, Bigger Than the Devil strikes a balance between crushing grooves, old-school crossover thrash, and complete insanity. The title track immediately announces that S.O.D haven't lost their edge. Built around one of the heaviest riffs in the catalog, Bigger Than the Devil slows things down just enough to let every crushing guitar hit land, while Billy Milano barks over the top with his trademark aggression. Kill the Assholes feels like classic S.O.D. Short, fast, angry, absolutely relentless. The Crackhead song captures the band's chaotic energy perfectly, delivering crossover mayhem in a few minutes. And then there are the microscopic ballad tracks, continuing one of S.O.D's strangest traditions in delivering entire joke songs in just a handful of seconds. That's always been part of the band's charm. Not every joke lands for every listener, especially decades later, but S.O.D never tried to be politically correct or commercially safe. They existed to entertain themselves first. If the audience laughed too, that was a bonus. Looking back today, Bigger Than the Devil may never have achieved the legendary status of Speak English or Die, but it accomplished something many reunion albums failed to do. It sounded like the same band. The chemistry was still there. The riffs were crushing. The humor was outrageous. And perhaps most importantly, it reminded everyone why S.O.D mattered in the first place. They helped invent crossover thrash. They inspired countless bands. And even after 14 years away, they proved they could still deliver an album that felt unmistakably like S.O.D. Unfortunately, the reunion wouldn't last forever, and tensions between members would eventually bring the project to another end. But for one brief moment at the end of the 1990s, Sergeant D marched back into battle one last time. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. In the next one, we're changing gears a bit, and I'm going to check in with former Anthrax vocalist Neil Turbin to hear what he's been up to, revisit his post-Anthrax career, and find out where his musical journey has taken him. He has a solo album coming out, or it came out back in 2003, and you don't want to miss that one. Check out the playlist. It should be appearing on your screen. And that has the entire story of Anthrax. And I'm doing select side projects as well. So thanks for watching. See you in the next one.